Welcome back for day 20 of our Proverbs daily walkthrough. Thank you so much for sticking with me and joining in. I pray that this has been a blessing to you. It has been for me. And I want to dive in today. There are a couple of little nuggets that I pulled out. Again, the Proverbs are written, it feels like sporadically, but it's just because of how we read it, how it's chopped up right now. But I did notice again, just like with yesterday, there were a couple of matching scriptures that I wanted to dig into a little bit today. So let's hop in, grab your favorite version. I also have a little study guide with me and something that I will encourage you to get. You all see all the books behind me. I've got books all over my house. And one of the things that I really love are concordances and commentaries. And I've got this one. It is the Matthew Henry commentary. You can find it online. I actually was looking at it in the Blue Letter Bible app earlier today when I was kind of studying some of these things out. And there are oftentimes, again, we were not born at the time where this was written. So some of the language might be a little bit foreign. Some of the colloquialisms or sayings might not make 100% sense the way that we read it in English now. But there have been many Bible scholars who have gone through, done the research into the Hebrew and the Greek, into the Septuagint and some of the other older writings from some of the rabbis that really spent a lot of time doing this study way back in the day. And we live in a society where we have access to so much information. It really is no reason for us to not know and not to dive deeper. And so there are a couple of verses that I needed to go back and kind of look at one of the commentaries, look at some of the definitions, and it really adds some color and some depth. So I'll share a couple of those with us today. But we're going to hop in. Let's start with chapter 20, verse 1. Wine is a mocker, strong drink is a brawler, and whoever is led astray by it is not wise. The wrath of a king is like the roaring of a lion. Whoever provokes him to anger sins against his own life. It is honorable for a man to stop striving, since any fool can start a quarrel. The lazy man will not plow because of winter. He will beg during harvest and have nothing. Counsel in the heart of man is like a deep water, but a man of understanding will draw it out. Most men will proclaim each his own goodness, but who can find a faithful man? Verse 7, the righteous man walks in his integrity. His children are blessed after him. A king who sits on the throne of judgment scatters all evil with his eyes. Verse 9, who can say, I have made my heart clean. I am pure from my sin. Diverse weights and diverse measures, they are both alike, an abomination to the Lord. Even a child is known by his deeds, whether what he does is pure and right. The hearing ear and the seeing eye, the Lord has made them both. Do not love sleep, lest you come to poverty. Open your eyes, and you will be satisfied with bread. Verse 14, it is good for nothing, cries the buyer, but when he has gone away, then he boasts. There is gold and a multitude of rubies, but the lips of knowledge are a precious jewel. Take the garment of one who is surety for a stranger and hold it as a pledge when it is for a seductress. Bread gained by deceit is sweet to a man, but afterward his mouth will be filled with gravel. Plans are established by counsel, but wise counsel wage war. Who goes about as a talebearer reveals secrets. Therefore, do not associate with one who flatters with his lips. Verse 20, whoever curses his father or his mother, his lamp will be put out in deep darkness. An inheritance gained hastily at the beginning will not be blessed at the end. Do not say, I will recompense evil. Wait for the Lord, and he will save you. Diverse weights are an abomination to the Lord, and dishonest scales are not good. Verse 24, a man's steps are of the Lord. How then can a man understand his own way? It is a snare for a man to devote rashly something as holy, and afterward to reconsider his vows. A wise king sifts out the wicked and brings the threshing wheel over them. The spirit of a man is the lamp of the Lord, searching all the inner depths of his heart. Mercy and truth preserve the king, and by loving kindness he upholds his throne. The glory of young men is their strength, and the splendor of old men is their gray head. Last verse is verse 30. Blows that hurt cleanse away evil, as do stripes the evil depths of the heart. So there was a lot there. Some of them we think we can understand quickly, and others we might need to do a little bit of a deep dive. One of the things that's really impactful for me about looking at various tools, right? There's so many tools in our arsenal when it comes to studying the Lord, is that there's always another layer that we can learn from. And so this particular commentary has been very helpful for me over the years. But a couple of things that I wanted to point out to you. So the very first passage that really stood out to me, well, there's a couple, right? One is verse 5. That says, counsel in the heart of man is like deep water, but a man of understanding will draw it out. So as I kind of meditated on that a little bit, I really wanted to look up those words. So counsel in that verse means advice, purpose, or counsel. And it is only drawn out by a man of understanding. Now it is likening the counsel that's in someone's heart to really deep water. So imagine a deep well. And if you want to get water, sometimes you have to have a bucket. You got to have a crank or a wheel or something, and you have to have a long rope, and you have to have effort. It takes interest. It takes curiosity. It takes patience and proximity. You can't get deep water from across the street. You have to be where the well is. And it takes some effort. And so what that means to me as I think about over the course of my life, the Lord brings people around you that have counsel within them, but the only way that you can get that wisdom out of that person that he's brought to you is if you take interest, is if you ask questions, if you're spending time, if you're taking the effort, especially because people who are wise, they don't run their lips a whole lot. That's one of the descriptions. Foolish people continue to yap their gums. But wise men, people who have a deep counsel within them, are quiet, they're observers, they're watchful, and they'll only share when it seems necessary, or if the right person with the right spirit, with a true, genuine interest and curiosity to learn, will bring to draw that out of them. And so if you desire to look for mentorship, if you desire to be close to someone and to glean maybe some of their life experience, take this particular passage to heart. The only way you can get deep water is with time, interest, curiosity, patience, and effort. And so it may require more of you to be able to spend time with that person, or you've got to be diligent. You've got to carve out the time. You've got to be flexible, but you've also got to heed what that wise counsel also shares with you, and it really will help you to grow. So that was one that really I felt was pretty impactful. I've got a lot of little notes, but another one that I noticed, there was 2 or 3 scriptures that were put together. One was about laziness. So we talked about some of the scriptures in the other chapters, whereas 2 or 3 of them that seemed to fit together. These about laziness I felt were pretty important to call out. The lazy man, this is verse 4, the lazy man will not plow because of winter. He will beg during harvest and have nothing. And then if you go to verse 13, it says, do not love sleep, lest you come to poverty. Open your eyes and you will be satisfied with bread. So those 2 are really interesting because, again, it's talking about work while work is available. And so we're in winter. Actually, while I'm recording this, it is wintertime where I live, and it's cold. And people don't want to work when it's uncomfortable, myself included. And but this is a really core principle that I think we all need to get. And I want to read it in the commentary, this Matthew Henry commentary. I'm going to read verse 4 because it does it justice more than what I could, but I thought it was impactful. It says for verse 4, slothfulness keeps men from plowing and sowing when the season is. Some excuse or other he has to shift it off, but the true reason is that it is cold weather. Thus careless are many in the affairs of their souls. Those that will not plow in seed time cannot expect to reap the harvest. They must beg their bread when the diligent are bringing home their sheaves with joy. And I'll read 13 as well. So 13 was the other one, talked about laziness. Though thou must sleep, yet love not sleep, as those do that hate business. Love not sleep for its own sake, but only as it fits for further work. And when thou art awake, look up and do not let slip thy opportunities. Apply thy mind closely to thy business. There's many people, and I have found myself in seasons this way where the Lord puts opportunities in front of you, whatever those things might be, and you don't work. For whatever reason, there could be very reasonable reasons why you can't do something or why you won't do something. But in the end, when harvest time comes, if you have not planted the seed, if you've not plowed the ground, if you've not started the work, taken those steps toward the direction that you believe the Lord is taking you in, when harvest time comes, there won't be any fruit to bear. Verse 13 talks about when you open your eyes, you'll be satisfied with bread. And that's because if you haven't been asleep, if you have been working, if you have been diligent, then the harvest of bread, something that you can eat and enjoy and use for your life, is what's available to you. And so that's an encouragement to you. And one thing that the Lord told me a long time ago, there's nothing lost in the kingdom. So if you don't till your ground, if you don't work it, but there happens to be dormant seed, at some point, through seed time and harvest, there will be a little bit of a crop, and nothing is lost. You can always try again. But there will be a season of lack when you are not diligent to take advantage of what the Lord has put in front of you. And so this was one that really spoke to me just because of the season that I'm in my life right now. Is the question I have is, Lord, am I working enough? And not in the sense of striving, but doing the things that are going to put me in position to be on the receiving end of whatever is coming in my direction. Am I making the right connections? Am I doing the small daily tasks that are going to help me get to the end result that I'm looking for? And there's a lot of times in our lives or seasons where we can't, or we won't, or we're not equipped. But that's just a note to keep in the back of your mind. There's a couple of other things. He mentions diverse weights and diverse measures twice. And I think we heard that in one of the other previous chapters as well, verse 10 and verse 23. Diverse weights and diverse measures, they are both alike, an abomination to the Lord. And 23, diverse weights are an abomination to the Lord, and dishonest scales are not good. So in reading a little bit about that in the marketplaces, there were certain weights, there were stones or certain measures that were used when you were purchasing something, but also when you were selling something. And people who were deceptive would change the weight that they use to determine the price. And so that is, again, speaking to people who do not operate in integrity, people who are liars, people who are thieves. Those things are an abomination to the Lord. It is not his desire for people to be taken advantage of. It is not his desire for things to be things to be done in a dishonest way where somebody loses out. That's exactly what was happening when Jesus went into the temple and he flipped the table over because these types of practices were happening in the temple. They were monetizing people coming in to pray. And so there were people who were sort of gatekeeping and keeping people from being able to enter into the house of the Lord to pray, which was their right, because they didn't have the right amount of money, or their sacrifice. They were charged more for the sacrifice than they would have been normally. So anyway, that's a really big deal to the Lord. He wants things to be on the up and up. He wants things to be fair, for things to be, equitable based on what you have and what you bring to bear, and based on your effort, and not out of dishonesty and deception. The last thing I will bring up, there's several others, but I'll kind of close it out with this, which I thought was really impactful, and also something from a leader's perspective that we really should pay attention to. I mentioned a couple of videos ago that book of Proverbs is a lot about leadership and how to not only lead yourself well, but to lead those around you. And in this case, there are two passages that actually talk about a king, which I had to look in the commentary to really understand the fullness of what it was saying. In verse 8, it says, "The king who sits on the throne of judgment scatters all evil with his eyes." And then in verse 26, it says, "A wise king sifts out the wicked and brings the threshing wheel over them." So and I've heard that term before, the throne of judgment. I'm sure there's several other times in the word. And the throne of judgment is not a place where there's a lot of honor. It's not, someone is the king, they're the ruler, they're the leader. And so they sit back in comfort. They sit back in the lap of luxury. They are weighted on hand and foot. No, that is not the role of the king. The role of the king is to judge righteously. And so when he sits in the throne of judgment, it's that throne of leadership. It is a place of vigilance, of watching, of paying attention, and rightfully judging based on the law of the Lord and law of the land. And so in verse 10, verse 8, it's talking about the king who scatters evils with his eyes, because he's watching. He's looking to see where people are being injured. He's looking to see who's being taken advantage of. He's looking to see where there may be unjust scales, where there might be division, where there might be issues. The judge is the one who, they didn't have an attorney back then like we have now. It's the judge that would righteously rule. And so that passage is about that. And then when we look at 26, it's the same sort of thing. The king sifts out the wicked. The only way that you can sift out is if you're looking and you're paying attention. And I think about the little sifter when you're sifting flour, how it's a continual movement. The flour doesn't just fall out sifted. There's actually work that has to be done in order to get what the result that you're looking for. And he brings the threshing wheel over them. So he administers justice, and he will execute that justice. In some cases, that means death for those who are treating people poorly. But as we think about things in our environment, as we're called to lead ourselves and lead the people around us, whether it's in our family or in our workplaces, in ministry places where we are, and whatever community organization we're a part of, if you are in the place of a king, your job is not to be served, but your job is to serve, and to serve righteously, to judge righteously, to be paying attention, to be watchful, looking at the signs. Maybe that's reading reports. Maybe that's interviewing your employees and just talking with them to figure out what's the pulse that's out there in your community, so that you know what's going on, so that you can make righteous judgment with wise counsel. There's one other passage that talks about, oh my goodness, where is it? Verse 18, plans are established by counsel, and by wise counsel wage war. Sometimes kings go to war, but they don't go to war without seeking counsel and having advisement from different various areas that will help them to judge righteously. So wise counsel is something that you have to seek after. You have to dig it out. You've got to draw it out of those that the Lord puts around you. You have to judge righteously. You have to work while it is still light, work even when it's uncomfortable, work even when it's not ideal in terms of how you feel. But in the end, there's goodness that comes on the other side. There is harvest, there is bread, there is wheat. There are employees or people in your kingdom that are appreciative of what you do. Being in a role of leadership is not about ruling over people, but leading people well and about serving people well. So I hope that this has been a blessing to you. I encourage you to dive into some of the tools. We live in a society now where so much work in terms of the research and the digging into the history of the Word of God. It's really fun to me to kind of dig in and hear the stories and to connect the dots. And I encourage you to find some tools that work well for you. It really does help the Bible come alive. This is a living, breathing resource that we have. The Holy Spirit is constantly teaching us, but He's also moved upon men and women to create tools that will make it easier for us to understand. And God really wants us to understand what He's saying. He is not hiding things from us. He is not covering things up. He wants us to know what he thinks. And so anyway, avail yourself to some of the resources. I'll drop a link in the comment box. Please share anything that resonated with you, what jumped out at you in your version. Give me some comments. I'd love to connect with you. And I'll see you tomorrow for chapter 21. Bye-bye.